Welcome to the Mark Belton Podcast,
powered by Roadrunner High Speed Online.
In a fast-paced online world, who can afford to be held back by snail slow dial-up or DSL? You need email, streaming, file sharing, and downloads all lightning fast. You need the blazing speed of Roadrunner High Speed Online.
Call 1-866-2-ENJOY-RR.
Or log on to www.timewarnercable.com.
What's that? News Talk 1130 WISN, Mark Belling, late afternoon show. I listen to all the commercials here, as you can tell, you know. You want to know a surefire way to make money? You hear all these get-rich things? You want to know a surefire way to make money? Do you want to know one? Put on seminars telling people how to make money. I don't make that. It's true. These guys that put on these seminars and do nothing but putting on the seminars, that's how they make it. Telling people how to be successful. You know how they got to be successful? Telling people how to be successful. Oh, the weather. Where's the weather? You don't have any weather in here. No, you don't. Really? Come in and find it. Oh, yeah. Oh, he did. And then he walks in and hands it to me. You are off to a slow start. Oh, I did put it in here. And then when I'm looking around, throwing stuff around, here he skulks in and hands me the weather. Fox 6's Justin Zolich. Mostly cloudy tonight with some patchy fog possible. It will get below the freezing point, though, low 28. The next 2 days, almost exactly the same. Partly sunny, 44 for tomorrow. Tomorrow night, scattered clouds, same low as tonight, 28. Friday, sun and a few clouds, same high as tomorrow, 44. Yeah, we've been right around 40 or so most of the day here at our studios. For the weekend, mostly cloudy. Rain developing late Saturday. By Sunday, it might mix with or change to snow for Sunday. But mild weather otherwise continuing. All right. I'm going to get into this story here in which I'm going to make the point that liberals don't like it when private businesses make money. And that's why liberals can't manage anymore any economy or any government that is premised on private sector economic growth. It never, ever works because they don't like it when people make money. We use as our example to make this point a current battle going on between the Milwaukee school superintendent and the school board. It's over an issue that it's on its face doesn't seem all that significant, but it actually is the subject of a big editorial in the Sentinel Journal today. The superintendent, Gregory Thornton, wants to privatize a portion of the school lunch program. School lunch programs in schools actually is huge money because almost every kid is eligible for them. And because in a district like Milwaukee, where so many of the kids are low income, the federal government pays for it, they end up having to make lots and lots and lots of these meals because they're free. As is the case in most urban areas, these school lunch programs have unionized employees. Thornton thinks by privatizing out a portion of the school lunch program, they can save significant money. Simply have a private business do what government workers are currently doing, for which they're not only getting a salary, but also getting health insurance benefits and time toward a pension. Not exactly something that most people in the food service industry in our country are getting. Thornton, dealing with the fact that he's already stuck with this teachers union contract and not able to use Governor Walker's budgetary tools because they did a contract extension before Governor Walker's reforms were passed. MPS is facing deficits, and MPS has been forced to make cutbacks in actual classroom programs. Thornton, wanting to save money to keep the money spent in the classroom rather than in the cafeteria, wants to farm out a portion of the school lunch program. The school board, however, in the pocket of the unions as usual, wants to continue to overpay people to stick a spoon in the mashed potatoes and flip it upside down. Now, the Sentinel Journal editorializes here on the side of Superintendent Thornton. I'm going to read you their editorial, and I want you to listen to this whole topic because I'm going to prove the point that I made earlier. This is the rare case of me quoting a Sentinel Journal editorial. The Milwaukee School Board is once again ignoring Superintendent Gregory Thornton's request to explore privatizing a portion of the school lunch program. And that's just another sign that the board is more concerned with saving union food service jobs than with saving money that could be better spent on educating kids. The board and Thornton have been down this road before. In his latest proposal, Thornton asked the board to approve the establishment of a leased commissary. The board voted down the proposal 5-4 in favor of a central kitchen run by district staff. Now, let me interject. What does that mean? Thornton's idea is that the food would all be made by a private company. The school board wants the food to be made at a giant commissary run by MPS. That's the dispute. The story continues. The board would not even consider the possibility of looking at other options to see if those would be more cost-effective. In a cash-strapped district, this makes absolutely no sense. Let me interject. This is rather extraordinary here, that you now even have the Sentinel Journal, a liberal paper, frustrated that a government body will not take obvious steps that they could use to save the wasting of money. And you're obviously wasting money if you're spending a fortune on unionized people slicing up onions. The story continues. I was just talking about privatizing a piece of it, a frustrated Thornton said. I was not talking about how to transport the food or service the food. The board appears to be against exploring any food service options that would eliminate union jobs. Once again, you see the problem in Wisconsin. Government officials more beholden to the union than they are to the taxpayers, or in this case, the constituencies they serve, the kids. The editorial continues. Currently, the food service workforce includes 48 temporary employees and more than 100 part-time employees. Administrators say they have had a hard time filling food service jobs. It's unsustainable, and my job is to find different ways to provide services at the best possible cost, Thornton said. We are a business, and we have to be able to put as much money in the classroom to educate our kids. We agree. Now, I'll interject again. We're talking here simple common sense. If MPS is hemorrhaging money down this food service operation, and they can save it by privatizing it and going to Cisco or somebody else and having them run a central commissary, you'd think it would be logical to do that. If a private business was running its own, if there's some business that had some giant work staff, I don't know what it would be, Northwestern or something, and they were losing a fortune running their commissary and they could save it by having somebody else make the food, of course they would do it. It's your obligation to try to control the costs that can be controlled so that you can put your money into the things that are important, including your product. But what happens with government is they become so beholden to unions that they're more concerned about preserving overpaid, unnecessary jobs than they are with their main function of actually educating kids. Back to the editorial. Some board members have argued that privatizing food service would mean cheaper, lower quality ingredients. I love it when they always claim that. That's right. If we privatize this, the food would be crappier. That's right. Government-served food is going to be worse than private sector-served food. The idea, of course, is crazy. Anyway, they continue. We think that's unlikely. Last week, the federal government released new nutrition standards for school lunches that spell out dramatic changes, including cutting sodium, limiting calories, and adding more fruits and vegetables. Any vendor would have to meet those standards, and there's nothing to stop the district from imposing even stricter standards. The other argument by board members is the switch could eliminate the jobs of the lowest paid workers in the district. It might, but a new vendor also might hire some or even most of the workers. And in any case, what's a better use of money and MPS expertise? Making food or educating students? I've never heard the newspaper make such sense before. Somebody go in there and lobotomize them? Maybe they've been listening to me. Well, let's not go too far. This is the first sensible editorial they've run in about 73 years. They continue. The problem is we don't know what would happen because the board never explored the possibilities. Of course they aren't. We all know what the board is doing. The board is going to save the union jobs at all cost, including whether or not it means that they have to lay off teachers or cut into the programs that go into the classrooms. They continue. The district should continue to look at other ways to be efficient. Selling more unused buildings and closing underperforming or problematic schools are two key tasks. The district also needs to address its long-term legacy costs. The board should be listening to Thornton on this one. Now, I'm going to make my point here that I was referring to, proving that the left doesn't want private businesses to make money, that they simply don't like that. It has become something that is intolerable to them. And I'm using this particular topic here to drive along to make this point. On this issue, though, itself, it's an interesting story. As you know, I'm very pessimistic about urban public education. I've said that I don't think MPS is salvageable. And the reason I am is you've got all of these agendas, and you see them here, other than educating kids, especially educating the kids who want to learn. The priorities are saving the jobs of the teachers, saving the benefits of the teachers, saving the at-risk kids, in other words, the ones who never show up for class. The actual students who have aptitude, who come from good families and who want to learn, are orphaned by public education. And politicians who are concerned instead about the parasites who make money working for government running the schools rather than focusing on the kids who actually want to learn. Every dollar that can be saved on an overpaid government union, stiff, is a dollar that could be put into actually providing the service. Now, that's my position. I'm now going to prove my point, however, about the liberals hating it when somebody makes money. The Sentinel Journal actually allowed a member of the school board to respond to this, and they pull out one of the bigger lefties, Terry Falk, big guy in the Walker recall and the whole thing. Classic, lifelong, broken down, stuck in the 70s ideology liberal, Terry Falk. I don't know this, but I'll bet $2 to Terry Falk's charity he's got at least one lefty bumper sticker on his car. See, it's one of those things where he won't contact me to take the bet if I'm right. But if I'm wrong, he will contact me and make me give $2 to some left-wing stupid organization. I think I'm safe, though. It's the kind of guy that he is. The real dyed-in-the-wool liberals, they can't help themselves. They got to slap it on their beat-up, junked-up, stupid cars. Here's what he writes. And for those of you who think liberals don't actually believe their idiocy, I've been telling you, you say this because you don't know any of them. Those of you who live out there like in Shaniqua, who never come across a liberal ever. See, I've had to deal with them my entire life. It's one of the crosses that I bear, in this world. I know exactly how they think. The thing that a lot of conservatives, including many in my audience, have never understood is they think, well, they just are trying to destroy things. No, they actually believe this stuff. Trust me, they do believe this stuff. Addled as it is, listen to him. You're going to hear this and you're going to think I'm making this up. This sounds like a parody of a liberal. But I've explained many times, you can't do parodies of liberals. They self-parody themselves. They self-parody. They do. Anyway, read it. All right. He writes, when your child bites into the lasagna at school, will that dish be made with the best ingredients our food service can provide? Or will it be made with the cheapest ingredients to maximize corporate profits? All in the one sentence. They're going to put the cheap crap in the lasagna to maximize. What does he say in his first sentence? To maximize corporate profits. He's making my point in one sentence. Maximize corporate profits. In his mind, those are bad words. The difference between an economic liberal and an economic conservative is an economic conservative thinks maximizing corporate profits is good. Liberals don't. Is it any surprise that we've had very little corporate profits in the United States over the last 3 years? When our country is being run by people who hate it when there are corporate profits? He continues, although I contend my point is already proven, he makes it clear here that he doesn't want to maximize corporate profits. He thinks that's bad. He then writes, those green beans off to the side, will they be grown by local Wisconsin farmers, or will they be lower-priced beans shipped in from a third-world country? Now, let me interject. Isn't this fascinating? I thought the liberals were the people who wanted to raise up third world countries. When did those liberals morph themselves into people who now say that we shouldn't be doing business with third world countries? Secondly, does anybody actually think the food being served in MPS is being picked up at farmers markets? They're buying it from the same commercial vendors as everyone else. Third, I'll ask a second question. How many kids in MPS do you think have eaten a green bean in the cafeteria? No, I don't want that. Yeah, they're eating their green beans out there. They're eating right next to the cauliflower and the broccoli that they're wolfing down. Spare me. He's gone through two. I can't. This is why I had to take that break early. I gotten through two sentences of his thing, and I can't stop myself. I mean, the thing is impossible not to heckle. I'm incapable. These points are so stupid, so self-parodic. That's self-parodying, self-parodic. You follow me on that? How you coming with that traffic button? You going to be ready for it next time around in there? Here's the next one. Will money be spent to give local food workers a living wage, or will much of the money be shipped out of state to corporate executives who live somewhere else? A liberal's idea of a living wage is paying somebody in a union more than you need to pay them to do that amount of work. This causes wastage. Money that could be spent in other areas of our economy or put to productive use is instead given to a union worker who then farms off a portion of that to some fat guy who sits in the AFL-CIO office down there on Blue Mountain Road and then writes out a political contribution check to Terry Falk. By the way, that was a pretty good explanation of the entire government union money train. I'm pretty good so far. The show's only like 38 minutes old. I've made a lot of good points. Have you noticed this? I've only gotten through one paragraph of Falk's Marxist screed here. He continues, maybe the worst will not happen if we privatize our school lunch program. Is there anything wrong with at least considering this concept? Actually, there is. Listen to this now. The bidding process rarely takes into account the inherent structural problems within the food service industry. No question that some company will come in with a marginally lower bid than Milwaukee Public Schools because private companies always outbid public food service systems. No kidding. But according to, now I love this, who do you think he's going to quote to make some point? Come on. If you're a liberal and you're going to quote something to make a point, who is it always? Always. 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 Yes! I badgered him into getting an answer posted in the New York Times. Yes! See, you're not as dumb as you think. I'm forcing it out of you. Have I not always told you that the correct answer is 99% of the time the easy and obvious answer? And you always try to make it more difficult. Pulling the New York Times. Here it is. But according to a recent New York Times article, as somebody who follows lefty thinking forever, if they want to quote a source, I am telling you 90% of the time it's the New York Times. I swear those people sit up and they wait in the morning until that thing gets there, and when it shows up on the door, they get driven into some sort of sexual euphoria. It's amazing that people can reproduce that they don't. Anyway, according to a recent New York Times article, how the food industry eats your kids' lunch. The quality of food is almost always sacrificed in order to make those, here we come, corporate profits. It's the second time he's used that word, corporate profits. Roland Zullo, a researcher at the University of Michigan, says in the article that his research found no substantive economic savings and that food service management firms spent less on labor and food, but more on fees and supplies. Once food service is privatized, if a school system has second thoughts later on, it may no longer have the internal expertise to reestablish its own operation. It can't go back. Oh, God forbid. Even the issue that MPS's food workers cost more than private sector employees is a red herring. Now listen to this. In July, the food workers' union contract will expire. Then they will pay into their pensions and health insurance at the state-established rate. Work rules in the contract go out the window and the school system can establish its own procedures. But let me interject. They'll still get the health insurance and they'll still get the pension. They'll have to kick into it, that's all. You go out privately, you don't have any health insurance costs and any pension costs at all. And let's be honest about this. What insane, cockamamie, broken down system puts a higher priority on giving a pension to somebody working in a cafeteria than giving a decent education to a kid in the inner city of Milwaukee? Some of you Central City parents, you listen to this and you decide who has your best interest at heart. These people that are out there trolling to try to keep overpaid union people on the dole with excessive benefits that are not justifiable at the expense of hardworking people trying to make a go of it, going to work for these private sector businesses who then actually, yes, do make a profit, invested in our country and pay taxes with it, supporting the massive demand for public services that these liberals give us. He continues. Privatization of governmental services is not about saving the taxpayers money. Well, then why do you think Thornton, the superintendent, is doing it? He's a lefty too, you know. It is about, listen to this. Listen to the buzzwords in just the one sentence alone. It is about how some private corporations are looking to take over governmental services in order to, here we go, maximize company profits. It's third time now. Maximize company profits. Third time he set that up. It's such a terrible thing. Again, I am proving my point that they hate it when private businesses make money. This is 3 times he stated that the reason we shouldn't do this is because the company is going to try to do this to make money. Even some marginally nonprofits are a part of this business game. He then says, we once took pride in the word public. Public parks, public museums, public libraries, and public schools. Somehow the private sector has turned public into a dirty word and convinced us that private is better. There's a reason for that. It's because politicians have sold out the public itself and turned over these resources so that a bunch of parasites can feed off the so-called public. Government unions, white-collar consultants. It's all a big money circle that they have created. They actually consider the word public to mean government. The public is supposed to mean owned by the public and done for the actual people. It's because they've taken public government and used it as their own trough to slop off of that it's gotten this bad name, that it has gotten to be so incredibly wasteful. Public service used to mean a sacrifice. Instead, now it means overpaying everyone. He continues. That doesn't mean that our public institutions don't need some reforms. For example, Social Security has structural problems. I love this now. Remember, this is supposed to be about food services thing. They can't stop themselves. Liberals can't ever stay on the subject. Thank God Bush isn't the president, or his name would be in here. Anyway, listen to this. For example, Social Security has serious structural problems, but how many Americans really want to dump the whole system and put our security in the stock market? MPS understands that our food service system needs to be reformed. MPS is moving away from school-based kitchens to a more efficient single commissary that will save the system millions of dollars in the long run. We can do this. We don't need, listen to this, we don't need a private company to skim taxpayer money off the top in order to accomplish this goal. That's how he thinks of it. If a private company makes money, they're skimming it. I made the argument going in that I was going to prove that liberals hate it when private businesses make money. Terry Falk there proves it. He thinks it's terrible when somebody makes money. He doesn't like it when somebody makes money. He'd rather have somebody pay dues to a union after getting a paycheck that is ludicrously high for the menial work that's performed than allow a private business to do the same work, I would argue at higher quality, and actually earn profits that can be scattered around in capital gains and dividends to create wealth in our country. These people hate corporate profits. They say it themselves. So why am I being, objected to if I say they hate it when companies make money when they, by their own rhetoric, keep saying it's terrible when corporations make profits? They think those are bad words, corporate profits. Is it any surprise? Tax receipts are down. Tax receipts which come from private individuals and private businesses making money that's taxed. Is it any surprise that those tax receipts are down when you have a country being run by people who have an ideology that it is terrible when anybody makes a profit? The reason they think this is that these liberals themselves have spent their entire lives not a single day in the private sector. They spent their entire lives feeding off the rest of us, and they think they're noble? Why is it any more noble for somebody to work on the food service at MPS when employed by a private company than as opposed to employed by MPS? Why is that more noble? The answer is it isn't. All they're doing is defending the wasting of money. I, by the way, am not a unilateral supporter of privatizing government services. Those of you who have listened to me over the years are aware that in many cases these private contracts are boondoggles. Sometimes the same crap that occurs in overpaying government workers can occur with private companies. For example, MMSD never held its previous operator of the sewage plant to any standards at all. They were way too cozy. I have argued over the years that the State Department of Transportation, and I hope Governor Walker is fixing that money pit, has been too close to the road contractors in Wisconsin. Sometimes when you privatize an operation, the private company ends up ripping you off blind. I'll give you a perfect example of privatization that doesn't work. The bridge repairs in the city of Milwaukee. The projects come in at incredible cost. They're bid at excessively high figures because the City of Milwaukee Department of Public Works and Mayor Tom Barrett did not hold their feet to the fire. The repairing of City Hall was a private contract project. But the contractors have been allowed to bleed the city dry, and now the consultants that are pretending they're coming up with a solution as to what the problem is are bleeding the city dry because the mayor of the City of Milwaukee and the Department of Public Works refuse to hold their feet to the fire. I am not a unilateral supporter of simply privatization. When privatization doesn't have competition, it's not a nirvana, and it may well be that at MPS, they'll end up awarding the contract on a sweetheart deal to some company that's made campaign contributions to members of the school board of the mayor. That could happen. I'm critical of that also. The point I'm making is in response to Falk, who is totally averse to the notion of eliminating some of the fat that we have in overpaying people by giving them unionized jobs that would never, ever be sustained in the private sector. Thus, having taxpayers pay more than they need to just to keep paying into the money pit of unionized benefits when the money could be going into actually educating kids. These people are the ones who always lecture us constantly. It's for the kids, it's for the kids, it's for the kids. It's never for the kids. It's always for them who get money supposedly being paid to help the kids. It's never about the kids. It's never about the recipient of services. It's always about them doing their skimming off the middle. And since he uses the word skim, what is a skim other than overpaying a union worker and then having that union worker then paying another skim out to the union boss on Blue Mount Avenue? That's where the skim is in our society. A bunch of lazy Democratic union bosses lobbying politicians to keep scams going where we excessively pay for governmental services because the money is being taken right out of the middle and sent off to union coffers, which are then turned around and used to reelect Democratic politicians who then turn around and make sure that these union coffers continue to be replenished. It's a circular scam they've got going. And it doesn't have a damn thing to do with kids. You know what I'm saying? Huh? You could get rid of every cafeteria worker at every school in America and save this country a fortune. But the clout that they have is the reason that it isn't. I'll tell you something else. I'm willing to bet that the cafeteria workers at Divine Savior Holy Angels make less money than the cafeteria workers at Milwaukee Vincent. And I'm willing to bet the food at Divine Savior Holy Angels is just as good, if not better, than the slop they're handing out at Milwaukee Vincent. Maybe I should go to both cafeterias and eat both sets of food and compare the two of them. Paul said they're all slop. I bet they're not. I bet it's all just fine. Oh, it's all slop like that. You say that, and I see what you eat in there, going off and eating your McDonald's and all of that stuff in there. School lunches are notoriously bad. See, when I was a kid, I was so easy to please, I never thought any of it was bad. What? Well, don't they just give the kids all the junk food now? They're giving them McNuggets and all that crap in the cafeterias. He's saying the quality will go down. The quality stinks anyway. Yeah, it's talking 1130 WISN, Mark Belling, late afternoon show. Let me explain something to the Marxists, and that's what they are. When you hear this constant ripping on corporate profits as being an evil thing, that's Marxism. They don't believe in corporations having profits. They believe in the public good coming from everybody working for the central planning master government. Let me explain something to these Marxists. Every public employee that's out there has 100% of their salary paid by taxes. The more people that are on the public payrolls being paid by taxes, the lower percentage is left to actually pay the taxes. When you have everybody working for government and everybody who works for government being given benefits that are unavoidable, who in the you-know-what do you think is going to pay for this if you don't let those of us who are in the private sector make any profits? The fact of the matter is that they are junkies and we're the dealers and they need us. That's what it is. They are addicted to their paychecks and their government power. We are the providers of them. Yet they're hacked off at us and they're trying to kill us off. They're trying to cut into our supply of the stuff that they're addicted to use an incredibly tortured analogy that somehow made sense in my own brain here. Maybe if some of them had ever spent a day of their lives in the private sector, they'd understand that when somebody starts a business, and almost every large business started as a tiny business, they usually have to borrow a lot of money, in many cases taking out full mortgages on their house, pounding on everybody they know to try to loan them money to get the thing started up. They take all of the risk themselves. As the business grows and develops, it's very hard for them to make much money out of it because if they take too much money out of the business, they can't have anything to invest and put back into it. They fight and fight and fight trying to be successful. And then when that business actually starts making some money, you've got people who begrudge them getting it after they took all of the risk and they're providing all of these jobs and they're paying all of the taxes. Now, I understand some of them, their skin crawls when I tell that story, lefties. Yeah, they're evil. They're not paying enough. They're evil. They're evil. They're evil. They say it over and over. Well, isn't the point that I established an hour ago that they hate it when the private sector makes money? Their own statements prove it. You look at Terry Falk's thing, he hates it. The notion that somebody might make some money off the food service at MPS. He thinks that's bad. Is it any surprise that the crowd that thinks that it's terrible when private sector makes any money is presiding over a country in which we have no economic growth going on and no private sector hiring going on? It's because they can't stand it when the private sector makes money. They want to tax it away rather than have it be put back to work in our economy. They think it's a bad thing. Some company reports record profits. Supposed to be a good cause for celebration. The business is doing well. The shareholders are doing well. The employees are doing well. They fight it. Oh, there's record profits. They're mad. They are trying to remake America not just into a socialist country, but a Marxist country. Marxism has failed everywhere it's been tried, as has socialism. And the real sufferers are not just the people who have to live in the country, but the people who are dependent on these services that the liberals claim that they care about. Because as fewer and fewer people are able to pay, and as the overall pie gets smaller and smaller, as fewer people make money, as the profits get lower and therefore tax receipts get lower, the services end up declining in the long run anyway. They claim they care about the kids. They claim they care about the parks. They claim they care about No, all they care about are the union leaders who skim money off the top from the employees who are overpaid to work in those operations. That's all they've ever cared about. They say they care about the parks. They don't care if the parks look nice. They don't care if there's great attractions in the park. They care about the union bosses getting the big cut of the dues and the people driving around sitting there in the lawnmowers and all that. I don't have time to take calls. I'm too busy listening to myself talk here. All right, I'll talk to him. To Jean in Brookfield, Jean in Brookfield, you're on News Talk 1130 WISN.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you ought to thank me because I was just as soon ready to blow the whole hour off and edit after having myself talk the whole time.
Well, liberals hate corporate profits except for when their 401ks or their pension plans are invested in those companies that are making profits, and then they make money.
Well, they magically want their stocks to go up, was somehow unable to disconnect that to the companies actually making any money. In fact, the public employee pensions in Wisconsin are invested almost entirely in the stock market. That's the reason why we're able to have these huge pensions that they're able to draw in, because it's all invested in corporate America. But that's aside from the point. The point that I'm trying to make is, but if you listen to their own rhetoric, they're making it clear they don't like corporate profits. There are actually people out there that are more concerned about overpaying union members than they are about having economic growth that allows all of us to thrive in our country. Thanks for the call. It isn't any surprise that the economy they therefore preside over is a train wreck. Is it any surprise that when they ran the state of Wisconsin, we had a massive budget deficit? We bring in one guy who is able to figure out, just cut in a little bit of the union power here and we can pay all of our bills just fine and improve our quality of services. It's because the guy who's supposedly the evil guy who's up there with the corporate profits and all of that stuff, he's the one who actually is concerned about the delivery of services rather than overpaying all the people who are feeding off of this in the middle. I told you I'd prove my point. Did I not prove it? Case is proven.